positions after stage 4. Still, Johnny Gemmell and Marty Olivier enjoying a good 13-second and a very lucky 13-second buffer over Serge Damso and Robert Paisley, who in turn were just 1 second ahead of Lawrence and Vermeulen. The class runners looked like this. It was Damso and Paisley at the top in the S2000, and picking out some of the other ones. In the N3s, it was Chris de Wet and Patrick Yende, while Hogan Fecken and Pierre Aries in the A7 had a very healthy lead themselves. For Johnny Gemmell, it was, if you'll pardon the expression, a shocking experience.
I got back spare, not the front. The shock just went in this last stage. Halfway through, the front shock started knocking. So I kept going, I slowed a little bit, and then we get back here and see it's pouring out oil. And I ain't got a spare one with us, rear ones we got, but these front ones are supposed to be strong. But it started leaking. And I just had them overhauled last week by the agents. So what can we do? We'll have to send the stuff overseas to get done now.
You tell them, Johnny. In the meantime, we'd already lost Gemmell and Olivier. They were joined by Ben St. Clair's Sasol Mitsubishi Evo 6 and also the Bosch Sasol Delight Rally Chicks team of Lola and Megan Verluck. The crews now had to cover 100 kilometers to get to Ermelo and Stage 5. Sweeping around the local airport at Ermelo, Stage 5 saw lots of locals and spectators giving the team some big support. Serge Damso and Robert Paisley in the S2000 Castrol Toyota Runnix had taken over the lead. Second in an S2000 Team Total Toyota Runnix were Etienne Lawrence and Andre Vermeulen, who were trailing the leaders. Lawrence was experiencing an engine misfire as well as a dodgy gearbox when the car finally arrived at the service park in Ermelo. In third position were Jan Habich and Douglas Judd in the S2000 BP Volkswagen Polo. And it was significant that 3 of the brand new FIA Class S2000 cars running for the first time this year were leading the event at this stage. In Class N2, the fight was swinging towards Nathan, with Komantarakis and Stowe losing precious seconds every stage. And in the biggest production car class N4, with 2-litre turbocharged engines and 4-wheel drive, this stage was won by Conrad Rotenbach, with Nicholas Ryan losing 2 seconds and Visser du Plessis a further 2 seconds down in his Metmeister Impreza WRX. So after stage 5, it was down to just 5 seconds, which separated Damso and Paisley and Lawrence and Vermeulen. Habich and Judd were a further 24 seconds down. And the class standings after stage 5, Nicholas Ryan and Skalk van Heerden going well in the N4 class, while Michael Nathan and Graham Hooper in the N2s had clocked a very solid time as well. Craig Trott and John Costa were up in front in the A6s. The BP Volkswagen Polo S2000 of Enzo Keen and Guy Hodgson broke a gearbox casing at the start of stage 5, and the crew was unable to continue with the rally.
Pity, I mean, we leading the championship, we would have obviously liked to finish this event, and apart from that, we needed time in the car. We had a major part failure at the start of stage 5. The gearbox housing disintegrated, and all the oil came out the gearbox. So, you know, we can't destroy the car by trying to get it here, and to change that specific part would take much longer than we actually have service time here. So we're basically out of the event, and I think we'll revert back to the workshop and the testing. And I'm just happy that the time I did in the car, it proved very reliable and very effective. You know, the car is fast.
One of the unique features of the Total Rally South Africa was that it is the only SA rally to be run on pace notes, as opposed to the normal secret route schedule normally used on SA events. Guy Hodgson, co-driver for Enzo Keen, explains the differences.
A blind rally is where the route is completely secret. The navigator and driver have no knowledge of it whatsoever before the rally starts. The navigator is given a book, and the book contains many hundreds, often, of pages of diagrams of all the junctions that we have to follow. In other words, you start the stage, we're 6.2 kilometers into the special stage, and on a blind rally I would call the driver into this T-junction left. Then 240 meters later, we have to go sort of kink left and right around a pole and rocks. Then 140 meters later, fork right around rocks and keep to the right. 340 meters later, a medium right bend over a crossroads with a caution. Then 200 meters later, turn off, hairpin left. So you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 instructions over 1 kilometer. Whereas a pace note rally is where we are allowed to go and look at the road prior to the rally, and we make very detailed description of the road. If we compare pace notes to the tulip diagrams, so it's turn slow left, into fast right, 150 meters, kink left and right around rocks, 30 meters into a flat jump, and fork right, into medium left, easy right, 250, fast right around rocks, 150, and then crest is immediately turn hairpin left. So you can see that where we had 5 instructions under the tulip diagram, at least 20 instructions. Much more detail, much more accuracy. The results of pace notes are much higher speeds, but also it's much safer because the navigator can give all the details to the driver so he can drive faster but more safely.
And this is what other competitors think of pace notes.
It definitely makes a navigator work a lot harder, and it definitely, you form a bit of a stronger bond between, because if he says what he says, you must drive accordingly. And some of the stuff is quite scary. If you think the corner's closing up and he says no, well it's, you know, it's a max corner or something, then you try and keep it there.
I enjoy pace notes. It's nice to read. You're more involved in the rally than what you normally do in our South African Championship. So you're more part of it.
Personally, I'm absolutely biased towards pace notes. Because I'm a navigator, I'm a co-driver, I have a much greater involvement in the car using pace notes. But we've got to be very careful. South Africa is a very large country, and you can't expect privateers to go to a Cape Town rally for a week, and they go to Durban for a week to do pace notes and do practices.
Going through the route, you actually grade your own corners according to your style and your ability, and that actually, on the safety point, makes it much, you know, nicer to actually know this is your corner that you've graded, and no excuses if you lose it too.
On a blind rally, a navigator is actually a navigator. You're navigating down the correct roads, whereas on pace notes, you're much more of a co-driver.
Stage 6 was a 6.62 kilometer sprint next to the railway line outside Ermelo, and saw the S2000 VW Polo take its first ever stage win, with Habig 2 seconds quicker than Damso and 5 faster than the other S2000 Runix of Lawrence. Rotenbach matched his time in the Subaru, and Fecken rounded out the top 5. The A7 Fight 2 was raging as Fecken took his BP Golf to a 1-second win, with the Castrol and Total Toyotas of Wilken and Damso respectively setting the same time. Rueda had the hammer down hard trying to make up for his Stage 1 faux pas, but was destined to retire on Stage 9. In Class A5, Gugu Zulu in his first rally of the year was finding his feet, and just 1 second slower than Houghton 2. Dolf Coetzee, the current Class A5 champion, was making inroads as well after a very slow start. And after all that racing, the overall results after Stage 6 still Damso and Paisley, this time enjoying just 8 seconds, while Lawrence and Andre Vermeulen were a further 22 seconds ahead of Habig and Douglas Judd. And in the classes, there were no other changes at the front. more bone-jolting action right here after this. 11 and 14 kilometers respectively were run on the Tolderia estate just outside Lothair. Rough and rocky but stunningly beautiful as the cars wound their way around the lake, the rally still drawing crowds of appreciative fans to the stages. Meanwhile, the rally also continued to take its toll on competitors as it moved into the forest areas around Warburton and Mpumalanga. Nicholas Ryan and Scott van Heerden in their Bosel Subaru WRX STI piled on the pressure, winning stage 7 overall, 5 seconds ahead of the Lawrence Total Toyota. Serge continued his winning streak on stage 8, Tolderia 2, but Lawrence kept up the pressure by recording a time just 1 second slower. Habech and Judd made steady progress as they discovered the abilities of their car, but suffered from a lack of servicing time to make any changes to the handling that the former champion pairing wanted. Fecken still held sway in Class A7, with Wilken and Houghton holding a watching brief. Skalkburger was having a troubled rally with persistent fuel pressure problems, but managed to beat the A6 Hitachi Tools conquest of the husband and wife team from KwaZulu-Natal, Richard and Natasha Vaughan, the coastal visitors, just 6 seconds slower. Rotenbach won Class N4 on stage 8 as he staked his claim on the class lead some 11 seconds quicker than Visser du Plessis. And that's Antonio Barbosa's N2 Aldan Mitsubishi jumping and bouncing, showing just how rough the stages are. The positions after stages 7 and 8, still Damso and Paisley at the top, but just 2 seconds separating them from Etienne Lawrence and Andre Vermeulen. And the classes reflected the latest retirements. It was Visser du Plessis and Tillo van Westragen in N4, Rodney Versage and Carolyn Swan in N3, and Hooper and Nathan in the N2 class. On stage 8, Chris de Wit and Patrick Yende crashed their N3 Team Total Toyota Runnix out of the rally when the car left the road and had an altercation with a tree. This happened 400 meters from the flying finish, and although de Wit had all the necessary parts with him to be able to repair the car, there was no service time allowed, and he withdrew from the event. He was leading Class N3 at the time.
The pace was a bit too hot for the car, I think. No, we had a bit of a cushion on the other N3 Oaks, but we were still trying to keep a good pace, and everything felt good. We were going nicely, but a few jumps on top of each other was just a bit too fast. We were just a bit too fast there, and the car launched a bit and went off the road and stopped in the trees. We were about 30 seconds ahead of the second N3. If you go too slow, you're behind. If you're too fast, you crash. So you must try and get that balance.
Having just claimed his first stage win of the rally, it went pear-shaped for Nicholas Ryan and Schalk van Heerden.